Hi, my name is Nestor Lopez, and I want to be talking to you guys about climate change and whether we should be concerned of it or not. There has been many times where political parties discuss climate change, and in fact, the whole world has been talking about climate change. But the question is, why have we been talking about it now while we've had so many changes in the climate years over? There's been giant ice ages, there's been time where volcanoes were constantly exploding as the earth was being developed. The difference from now is that the Earth seems like it's going to be in its final development stage. It's not going to do any more giant changes. And the only differences in temperature has really been coming from people. There's been many scientific groups that have been researching the temperature changes from the 1800s to now, and the temperature changes have been slowly rising. It's also very interesting how this has been affecting our ice caps and affecting our sea levels all around us, making it very dangerous to live on coastal areas. In fact, there's many coastal areas around the US that have very dangerous times coming up for ahead, especially Florida, which is around the same sea level as the water around it. The largest culprit of the climate change and the temperature change probably is from the amount of energy and the amount of greenhouse gases humans have been releasing of late. Ever since the industrial age, we have been demanding more and more energy to produce these factories that will be able to produce all the needs that we have. The Earth has to respond to the environment around it, to what the atmosphere is giving it. So we've seen like Grand Canyon, this was a whole place that was filled with water and it had to lose all of this water, so now there's only a very small river down it. This is because the environment changed around it. There was less rainwater coming in, the sea level went way down, and now there's a giant hole. This won't be the same case with all the people that are living by the coastal areas. We need ports, we need large body of water around us to provide for our fresh water sources. And we might lose all of this because of all the coal companies, all the large oil companies that are emitting these greenhouse gases. Companies that require fossil fuels and use fossil fuels as their product have been the largest contributors of our climate change. The two largest companies are China Coal, that produce 14.32% of all carbon emissions, and Saudi Arabian Oil, that produces around 4.5 of all carbon emission in the whole world. The China National Coal Group is probably the largest source of carbon footprint that China has. It's a conglomerate of many companies, and all of these companies require fossil fuels and emit greenhouse gases. These plants are very dangerous to the air around China. In fact, many of these plants had to be shut down not only because they were polluting the air, but they were polluting fresh water sources around them. And now there's many times where there's a giant smog going across China, and most people through their everyday lives have to wear masks just to protect themselves from the air. This amount is too much for the atmosphere, for the ocean, the plant life, to be able to regulate and control all of the emissions that the atmosphere is being filled with now. So we're getting all of these climate changes, all of this global warming from it. So the question is, are we going to be able to sustain ourselves off of clean energy? Are we going to be able to decrease the amount of emissions that we're giving off into the atmosphere? Or do we need to burn all of these fuels to fit the energy demand that the people have? Ireland was able to meet the demands that the people needed without having to be so heavily dependent on fossil fuels. They found alternatives by using renewable energy resources that will constantly be able to suffice the energy demand. These are a couple of landmarks that you can see in Ireland. The renewable energy that Ireland was able to obtain mainly came from solar panels, wind turbines, and hydropower plants. In fact, hydropower plants give around 73% of all the electricity that people need over there, and the other 27% mainly come from geothermal power. In very few circumstances, they do use fossil fuels, but around 95% of their energy, in fact a little bit more, is completely renewable. The world has been taking notice of this climate change issue. In fact, the United Nations all came together and signed this Paris Climate Agreement, specifically designed to find a group of scientists dedicated to fixing the problem that we will have in our later years. So we're making the steps forward, but we just need society to realize that we don't need to use gas-powered cars, that we don't need to be so dependent on fossil fuels for electricity when we can find many, many alternatives that do just the job just as fine. This narration was to only emphasize all the alternatives, all the possibilities that we can do instead of depending on these fossil fuels. I know the US still hasn't opted in to the Paris Agreement, but it's already good that we have something like the Paris Agreement to push forward climate change and to resolve the issue before it gets too uncontrollable. Thank you for your time and have a good one.